Okay, welcome colleagues. So the lunch seminar during the rise, this is one of our innovations. So today's speaker is Nancy Romer. Nancy Romer is a personal friend and a champion in fighting hunger and malnutrition. She was working for WFP where I began to know her, and she has worked with our colleagues like Josette Chiron in setting up some of the largest partnership between private and the public sector to bring the private sector to work on humanitarian reasons. So Nancy, I think that was a great championship in pushing WFP in doing that. And just about maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago, Nancy was working for a capital area food bank. You must know that bank. It's a food bank, no money, just a food. And I had a chance to visit the bank twice, and I was so impressed about her work to really use innovation. So Nancy is not a researcher, but everything she does has innovation. So using innovative approach to identify the potential beneficiaries and to mobilize resources from public, private sectors, from general citizens, and so on. So I heard her talking at NPR, right? I remember. And so just a junior champion in pushing some of the common cause we are working on. Just about a week ago, Nancy joined a new organization called Healthier America. Is it right? A partnership for Healthier America. So it's an initiative by our former First Lady, Michelle Obama. You must know that Michelle Obama planted the orange flesh sweet potato in the White House vegetable garden, I remember, right? I hope they're still there, I hope, after she left. So now, Nancy is working with Michelle Obama. So let's make sure that some of the nutritious food crops will go beyond little garden in the White House, maybe even beyond. So I think, Nancy, you are really a champion in working with us on that. And just for your information, this is the first public event since Nancy has taken over the partnership for Healthy America, right, Nancy? Let's give her a round of applause.
Thank you so much. Director General Schengen Fan and members of the IFPRI global community. Actually, I need to put this somewhere. Can I close this?
Yes,
You don't
you
use it,
perfectly
right?
close it, and they will, yeah.
Okay. And members of the IFPRI family, what an honor to be with you. And on behalf of my former colleagues at the World Food Program, my former colleagues at the Capital Area Food Bank, and my current colleagues at the Partnership for Healthier America, I really want to thank you for your research, for your thought leadership, and for really positioning those of us who work in the food security community to really do the work that we do. It has been profoundly significant. In the spring of 2014, I was walking through our warehouse at the Capital Area Food Bank, a cavernous Costco-like warehouse, and I noticed that it seemed to be exploding from the sheer volume of sheet cake. I asked one of our workers, what in the world is going on? And they said, well, Nancy, you said that only a small percentage of donations could be snacks. Oh, it dawned on me with horror. A policy decision to limit processed sugary snacks had led to a backup of those very things in our warehouse and was exposing to me, as the new leader of that important organization, what we had in our inventory. I walked to my office and immediately banged out a letter to the president of the company. I learned this sheet cake was coming from a sole retailer. And I didn't know the man, but he immediately invited me to come to headquarters, and I did. And I explained, we loved our partnership, we valued their work and contributions, but we had way too much cake than we could distribute to food insecure people in good conscience. And his reply was really swift. He said, Nancy, I don't want to be giving you food you don't want, and I don't want to be overproducing sheet cake. And he sent out his director of operations, and we began to work to get that eliminated from our food supply. And ultimately, it led to a policy to eliminate these processed sugary bakery snacks, holiday candies, and sugary sodas from our urban food supply. Now, by itself, this story might not matter very much. But when you consider it in the context of the work of food banks nationwide and in the context of global hunger, it becomes very important. And so I want to do three things today. First, I'm going to detail our journey at the food bank, where the Capital Area Food Bank is doing some of the smartest, innovative urban hunger work anywhere in this country. Second, I'm going to outline the broader systems change that I think is essential to accompany this emergency work if we are really to effectively address food insecurity in a way that doesn't aggravate obesity and the companion problems of diabetes and heart disease. And then third, I hope to provoke you a bit by arguing that in urban areas of developed countries, inexpensive and free access to processed food is a much greater problem even than the lack of access to good food, and that companies hold the power to effect change in this critical space. There are 202 food banks nationwide. Together they serve 46 million people, or 14% of the nation's population. And these food banks not only provide food to somebody who has lost a job in a moment and needs a couple of meals to get back on his or her feet, but they've become a regular part of the food supply of low-income America. And this is ever more true in urban America. Now, as you know, people are moving to cities, and I believe Schengen talked about that this morning, the urbanization of our globe. 55% live in cities today. By mid-century, we expect 66% to live in cities. And as populations move to cities, so too does poverty move to cities, in fact, disproportionately so. 2/3 of the global population with diabetes, that's 415 million people, reside in cities. And this ratio applies in the United States. Now, a person who is diabetic and poor and living in a United States city, she gets her food in three primary ways. First, she relies on SNAP. That's the federal program that provides a cash subsidy for groceries that she will spend on retail groceries. Second, she may have a minimum wage job that she devotes a portion of the wages to food, which will be spent in grocery stores or in fast food places. Or third, she may go to a food bank, which gets 1/3 of its donations from grocery stores. Now, with that as backdrop, let's talk about the emergency work of food banks. Given what we know about the powerful connection between food and health, you would expect food banks to have migrated very quickly to only healthy distributions long ago. That's failed to happen because for years we have misunderstood the problem as a lack of access to food. And so in response, if the problem's lack of access, you scramble to capture as much food as possible, right? And while bellies have been filled, we've missed a real opportunity to improve diet-related health of those we serve. In fact, we might have unwittingly made it worse by failing to appreciate the opportunity we have to prevent the troika of diet-related disease, obesity, diabetes, and heart disease. In America, hunger doesn't show up as a calorie deficit. A low-income person who eats a honey bun for breakfast from 7-Eleven and McDonald's for lunch and a bag of chips at dinner is getting 2 or 3 times the calories needed for the recommended daily allowance, but only a fraction of the nutrients. And then, of course, it's not surprising that people then are obese, and we know very factually that diabetes and heart disease are connected to obesity. At the same time, we know that good food helps prevent these diseases, and we know that paired with physical activity and other habits, it can prevent the prevalence of obesity. With this burden of knowledge, food banks, the Partnership for Healthier America, IFPRI, the World Food Program, all of us in the food insecurity and hunger relief space must rethink the problem we're trying to serve in urban America. The issue is not just lack of food. It is lack of access to nutritious food like fruits and vegetables. Yes, that's more commonly understood. And it is excess supply of processed foods with added sugar and high levels of sodium. So what can we do? Let's start with the emergency work. In the past 5 years at the Capital Area Food Bank, we worked on 2 fronts. The first front was ferociously working to improve the food inventory, and the second was working with people to form good food habits. The first step was to clean up our inventory. In 2013, we embedded health and wellness into our strategic plan with the explicit objective to contribute to health and wellness as we provide more nourishing food across the metropolitan area. This paved the way for a host of policy and operational decisions that cemented the tie between food and health. We aligned operations with our goals by getting our nutrition experts out of their silos and into operations. The second step was evaluating and tracking our food supply with 3 simple factors: added sugar, added sodium, and levels of fiber. Food that was under the thresholds for added sugar and added sodium, as well as over the threshold for fiber, was designated wellness food. All other food was designated non-wellness food. That put us in a position to work with our retail donors as we began to reduce the donations that did not meet this criteria. And it allowed us to get rid of excess cake, soda, leftover holiday candy. And I really want to emphasize here, because we redefined our food policy, food acceptance policy, not to take these things, because we realized that getting rid of the things that were causing disease was as critical as adding the good things. Step 3, unlocking the power of the food that we distribute. Of course, the most important work was and remains getting food out the door and onto the plate. And a big moment came for us when we realized we were putting too many calories into nutrition education. People either already knew how many calories was in a banana, or they didn't care how much potassium was in a banana, or they didn't care. But boy, they really did want to know that that big purple thing is an eggplant, and if you cut it up and dice an onion and add a can of low-salt tomatoes cooked on low heat, that it becomes something delicious and good for you, quickly prepared. So we began using recipes, and these recipes are powerful. You can see them on the food bank website. You can prepare a meal for 4 in under $7. They have to be quick, nutritious, and easy. Produce guides. What is a carrot? Don't assume people know. Don't assume people in urban areas know that you can bite into a carrot raw. They don't. How do you store it? What do you do with it? And a train the trainer curriculum that really equips our nonprofit partners to share this information. We also used schools as a critical venue. Of course, this is not unlike the World Food Program, where we were providing meals to children in millions of schools, but it is also in Washington, D.C., we're in 89 different schools. These schools are so critical because we're introducing the foods when children are young and their palates are forming, because children are the key to their parents, and sustained habits, so critical in urban areas. And not unlike the international scene, we see educational outcomes as well as the hoped-for nutritional outcomes. And then this bear of an issue, how do we measure our outcomes? Pounds matter, but they are an output, not an outcome, and we sometimes treat them as the former. Hunger relief organizations measure pounds because it's easy. WFP measures metric tons because that is easy. The food bank and every other domestic hunger relief organization measures pounds because it is easy. They both translate into meals, and that satisfies those of us, like me, and our donors who are hungry for a quantifiable measure of achievement. But soda weighs more than leafy greens, which means it produces a lot more pounds of output. In 2014, we eliminated 2 million pounds of full-calorie soda from our inventory, cutting an estimated 2 million pounds from our distribution. Eliminating sugary bakery items and candy eliminated many, many, many more pounds. And that very same year, with intention, we added 80,000 for the purchase of leafy greens. But those two steps together increased our health impact, but decreased significantly our pound output. So the Capital Area Food Bank is beginning to think about what else can we measure. We can't do away with weight, of course, but we're thinking about pounds differently. Pounds of produce per person in need. Wellness pounds distributed. Wellness pounds ordered by our partners. Wellness pounds donated by retailers. Incentivize the supply chain. In the end, while this work was and is so very important, it also evidenced to me daily how badly we need broader systems change. The emergency food system in America targets about 15% of food needs of the food insecure. The other 85% is expected to come from the Federal Emergency Food and Nutrition Program, SNAP, which is a retail grocery-based program, and low-income wages, the majority of which are spent in grocery stores and fast food places. And we know that long-lasting, shelf-stable processed foods are the least expensive groceries. Crackers, cookies, white pasta, 99 cents a box. Canned soups, high in sodium, chips, sugary soda. These things are the most available, the most palatable, the most affordable, and the most marketed in America. And we've got to look at our cities, the climbing rates of obesity in our cities, our children, especially the children, the low-income children in our cities. In 1970, 5% of our children were obese. Today, 17% are obese. and that number is climbing. Our food insecure children need good food, yes. But our food insecure children, they also need less processed food. And our food insecure children need more physical activity. And that leads me to my final and closing point. In capitalist societies, capitalist power brokers, that would be companies and corporations, have the power to affect the broadest change on our food supply. Food banks and shoppers are downstream of these companies. The Partnership for Healthier America, which I now lead, has 200 corporate partners who have committed to make change that will either improve the food supply or increase physical activity. I'll give you 2 examples. In a partnership we negotiated with Dannon, the global company agreed to increase nutrient density by 10% and to reduce sugar and fat in all its dairy products globally, marketed under Dannon, Danimals, Danonino, Oikos, Activia, Light and Fit, and Dan Active. The company cut the sugar content in 78% of its products, including 100% of its products marketed to children. The company also invested $3 million in education and research focused on healthy eating habits. A deal we negotiated with PepsiCo in October, they agreed to limit 2/3 of their revenue globally to products with fewer than 100 calories. And to reduce added sugar, this will take literally billions of empty calories out of the global food supply in urban areas. This work to shift the kinds and contents of food that food and beverage companies provide has the power to shift the food ecosystem, whether we like it or not. And this is the journey I am embarking on now. And a comment I want to leave you with came, it was so interesting this summer. I was invited to speak at an international global conference of a retailer in Philadelphia. And it was really a very bold company that convened people from all over the world to talk about how do we balance our capitalist mandate to make money against our moral imperative to help people eat better. And the senior-most official with this company, who was from the Netherlands, approached me and said, "Nancy, I was very skeptical about this meeting, but it has been fascinating. I keep forgetting that in the United States of America, companies have all the power." So, ladies and gentlemen, I leave you with this thought. In the developing world, hunger relief work supplements subsistence farming. In urban America, where I am working on hunger relief every day, it supplements our urban food ecosystem. And that is determined by restaurants, that is determined by fast food, that is determined by grocers. And it's a critical opportunity. We can't address food insecurity in this country without understanding the outsized role they play and beginning to work with them as partners and friends in our mutual solution. Thank you very much.